Okay. Hi everyone. In this video, we will dive deep into the core concept of AI agent development, the agent loop. So, it is better to understand how the LLM powered agent think, act, and use tools. We should have that good understanding of it for us to develop the AI agent. And what is AI agent? So, the agent loop is the heart of every autonomous agent. It's a cycle where the agent gets the inputs and the context, and it does the it does the reasoning, and it decides whether to call a tool and process the information and repeat until it produces the best possible response. So we will see how it is like for agent loop. Um, the agent gets the input and the context, and that is fed to the LLM, and the LLM starts to reasons it, and then it decides whether it has to call any tools for it to perform that action, and it processes the informations, again does the reasoning, it actually thinks, acts, calls the tools, and it goes on this loop until it gets the best possible response for it, and it finally gives us the response. So this is in a nutshell what the agent loop looks like, right? So we will take an example and see how the agent thinks and responds, and calls the tools and gives us the final output for us. So we'll take a simple example. So the task for the agent is we're going to ask what is the weather today in Sydney, and you can see on the left hand side user and system prompt. So we are generating a prompt with the role user, and the content is what is the weather today in Sydney. And we're also passing a system prompt in that we are telling that it's a helpful assistant and with access to the current time and HTTP request tools, and that is fed as an input to the agent loop or agent. And what the agent does, so it is given as an input to LLM starts to do the reasoning, and the first reasoning what it thinks is, okay, I need to answer what is the weather today in Sydney, and for that it has to first understand what is today's date, because the question is what is the weather today in Sydney. So for the agent to respond to it, it actually reasoned correctly. It says it has to answer the user questions of what is the weather, and for that it has to know what is the date today. So for that it actually needs to call a tool, and it has to use a tool for current date. So with that it actually the response and output saying the LLM response and output saying that it has to call the tool, it has to use it has to go for tool use, and name of the tool is current time, and it can also pass the parameter to it. So for now it just calls current time, and it actually generated assistant a prompt, and with that the tool has been called, the current time tool has been called with that parameters inputs that we created as part of the prompt, and the tool actually responds back with the current date, and that is the whatever the response that we got from tool, that is built as an user prompt. You can see the tool result is again parsed and sent as a user prompt with the tool use ID and the status of it and the content like the daytime value of it, and that is again fed back to the LLM, and the LLM now has to do the next reasoning, because now it has the today's date, and it has to now look for the current weather for the Sydney on this day, and it has to make a API call. And for that weather API call, it has to pass the date for which it has to get the response. And you can again think the LLM gives, or we get the assistant prompt with role assistant prompt, and in the content you can see it says tool use, and it has to call the it has to use the HTTP request tool, and a couple of parameters that it has to pass. So it input method would be get, and the URL it has to use, and the parameters city and date. So it actually formulated this, and this assistant prompt that it generated would be fed to the would be used for the tool to, I mean, it will actually make the call for the tools, and it will get the weather for that date, because it is making an API call. And the use now whatever response that we got from that from the tool call, it is again formulated as a user prompt, and it is given as a tool result. And you can see the tool result, the tool ID is tool underscore 2, and the status is success, and it has actually formulated the content with the response from the tool weather API tool, and it actually tells what is the weather, and that we are sending as a user prompt as an input to the LLM and agent loop. And agent now reasons it, and it now says, okay, I now have the weather data for today's date in Sydney, and I can answer the user question directly. So it doesn't need to go for any additional loop, because first it identified the today's date through first reasoning, and it also understood it has to make a call, or it has to make an use of tool, and the tool that it has to use is the current date, and it got the current date. And after that, once it got access to the current date, it understood that it has to call a weather API for to get the weather, and it passed the current date as an input and this place, and it also called the API, and whatever response that it has got from that tool, we pass it as a user input back to the LLM, and with that the LLM finally reasons it, okay, I have both today's date and also the current day as the weather date, sorry, current weather, and it doesn't need to go for any subsequent loops, and it actually responds back to us with the output. As in role assistant, it gives us an output saying that today in Sydney it is 22 degrees Celsius and partly cloudy. So this response we got based on the agent loop, and the reason it did, and the action that it took, and the response it gave to us. So this is how the agent loop works, and this actually helps us to when you are building an agent, if you have a good understanding of agent loop, you will be able to trace it and see. I mean, we can try to make the agent response as so we know that the LLM hallucinates it, and also we should know what is happening inside to get a required output for us. So I highly recommend you understand the agent loop and get more understanding and build a proper agents. Thank you for watching, and we will have a subsequent videos on agents, and stay tuned. Thank you.